Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining Heather and I. My name is Soila. I'm the founder and editor of the divorcemagazine.co.uk. And also, I've got a new online magazine. This one is for divorced parents, and this one is called Helping Children Cope. An online newspaper magazine for parents who are going through divorce to make sure that their children are all right at the end of the day. Today, I have Heather Brown. I'll let Heather tell us what it is that she does. Hi, Heather.
Hi, Soila. I'm Heather Brown. I'm currently a family mediator. I'm also a managing director and behaviour mentor at an organisation called Present Future Solution, which works with excluded teenagers in the Croydon Borough that may have been excluded from schools. And we work with changing behaviours and letting young people look at the choices that they have. My background is also in child contact. I managed two child contact centres for about 7 years. I'm also a SPITS facilitator, which is the Separated Parents Information Programme facilitator as well.
Okay.
And I also have a degree in psychology and counselling.
Okay, all right. So that's the other one. Actually, I had forgotten about the SWIFs, and I think that's another one that is pretty interesting to talk about in a
Yes,
forum like this, where it's about divorce and children.
definitely.
So you mentioned about the contact centers, Heather, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, because
Yes.
I think I have had a few emails or parents or people asking about contact centers,
Mm-hmm.
or not just asking about them, but trying to see if contact centers would be the solution to their co-parenting issues and problems that they're going through at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what I would start off by asking you with contact centers. The
Yes.
first question that I would ask is what role do contact centers play when it comes to co-parenting?
Right, I think they play a big part, to be honest, and I think especially with families that are in high conflict.
Okay.
So that's parents that cannot communicate properly. I think they play a role because they provide a venue, like a safe venue for contact to take place,
Okay.
and it's also especially if parents can't agree with how to, who's going to pick up the children or where they're going to meet and things like that. And if they can't communicate, then that's what that centre is there, because it is a neutral and the centres are impartial.
Okay.
So what you find is that families go there. So there's a resident parents, that's the parent who has the child, and then the non-resident parent is the person that is the contact parent,
Okay.
and they're the person that would normally access the centre. So the child would be brought to the centre, and then the non-resident parent would have access to their child, really.
Okay. I'm thinking of one particular case in mind at the moment, and this mom has wondered whether contact centers would be a good solution for them. So in this case, dad comes in and out of the child's life
Yes,
regularly, in and out. It
right.
sounds it's just not a good situation.
Yes.
And when he does come in, even when he's not in the child's life, he's very aggressive, very abusive
Hmm.
towards mom via emails, via text messages, and situations like that, and things like that. Uh, Mom would like, and she does encourage contact with dad, but the
Yes.
last time dad was very, his behavior was erratic.
Right.
He arrived really late. He brought the child really late back to the house. He was dirty. He was hungry. It was just not a good setup. And
Mm.
previously to that, every time their son would go and spend the night or the weekend at dad's, first of all, there was almost neglect, I would say, in terms of feeding, and the child would sleep in his clothes, in his jeans and sweatshirt, because dad couldn't be bothered to put it, and the child
Yes.
would say, I don't like sleeping in my jeans, that kind of
Mm.
that whole situation. Mom would like to keep contact going, but
Yes.
she's now looking at, can she use a contact center in this kind, how if she did decide she wants to go through a contact center,
Mhm.
what steps would she need to take?
Right. I think the best thing that she would need to do is to find a local contact centre in her area.
Okay.
So she could contact NACCC, which is the National Association of Child Contact Centres,
Okay.
and they have a list of approved centres that they regulate basically and provide training for.
All right.
And there's a database that's on there, and then she can look for her local centre.
Okay.
And if she contacted them, and then what they would do is they would either send her out her referral form, because I don't think a lot of parents realise they can do self-referrals.
I was just about to ask. Yeah.
They can do self-referrals. Some contact centres prefer referrals via solicitors or CAFCASS officers, but you can do self-referrals. And what they would do then is invite her in for an interview, just to get background information about the current situation, and then maybe sit down and decide which option is better, because there's supported contact and there's also supervised contact.
Can you tell us the difference between the two?
With supported contact takes place with other families at the centre at the same time.
Right.
So you may find there's about 5 to 6 or maybe more, 7 families having contact at the same time. And that is normally reserved for low-risk families. So where, as you mentioned before, where times aren't being agreed to, where children are being brought back late, or where there's been such a long gap, a child just needs to get to know that parent again. Okay. So that's what that's normally reserved for. But some of the things that you were mentioning about this case, it looks like it may go towards supervised contact. Yeah, okay. And what that is that contact takes place between the parent and the child, but there is a worker or maybe 2 workers in the room at the same time, and they will be taking notes. All right. Okay. So that's an extra, it's a safer environment for that child. Okay. And sorry, go ahead.
And with what kind of in the supervised contact, right?
Yeah.
It's the child and the mum or the dad or whoever the other person is, the guardian, step parent.
Yes.
And then there's one other person in the room.
Yes. And that worker is there to ensure that contact goes ahead safely.
Oh, right.
And that things that are being talked about are appropriate, and that the child is not going to be put at risk at all.
So they're actually observing this the contact or the
yes.
I can't find the word right now.
Yes, so the
interaction between mum and child or dad and child. All right. Okay.
Yes. And so I think a lot of, especially for reassurance for the resident parent as well.
Yes.
Especially if there's been a history of, as you said, of past abuse, or if there's been domestic violence, and that child may have witnessed or have been, affected by as well, have domestic violence against them. Yeah. This is what that ensures the safety for everybody in that room. Okay. And so what you might find is in that room there's panic alarms, panic buttons. All right. At work, and that's why if the higher the risk, they might have 2 workers there. All right. So that one. So if anything happens, that worker will remove that child immediately and bring them to safety. So
to go to a contact centre, you don't need to be referred by the courts?
You can be, and I think referrals come from all different places. So as we said, you can do a self-referral, or you can have the courts issue if a family has gone to court and a judge may want to say, okay, I'm going to order 6 supervised contact sessions, so that I can read the notes to see how the interaction is, so they can make a decision. Okay. They may come via solicitors who may feel for their client that it's better to have supervised contact, so that notes can also be produced in court as well. Okay. And then from CAFCASS, if a family's gone to court and the court has appointed a CAFCASS officer, then the CAFCASS officer, as part of their report, will send a family to have several sessions at a contact centre, so that they can also use those notes.
Heather, can you tell people who might not know what CAFCASS is actually?
Yeah, so CAFCASS stands for Children and Family Court Advisory Support Service. And they are usually appointed, CAFCASS officer appointed by the courts when the family has come with a family dispute that involves children. Okay. So their role is to decide and work with the family to make arrangements about future contact arrangements for that child, i.e. where the child may live, and who is going to be the contact person, what will happen, how frequent the contact visits will be, and if it's safe to do so. Because in some circumstances, it may not be safe for that child to have access with that parent, due to a number of reasons, either, as I said, mentioned before, domestic violence or substance abuse or alcohol abuse. So it may be that parent has to go away and work on those issues before contact can be introduced.
All right. And so they're actually there looking out for the children's rights, for the child's rights, and make sure that the child's custody
Yes.
which is not a word that is used so much, not so much anymore, child
Uh,
custody.
yeah.
But to make sure that it's all in the best interest of the child. The setup that is created is in the best interest of the child.
Yes,
Okay.
they do.
Are they in any way linked to social services?
No, they're not.
They're not. Okay.
Unless that family is going through, is known to social services,
Yeah.
then that CAFCASS officer is appointed for that particular case.
Okay.
But if they're not known to social services, then no, social services won't be involved.
Okay.
With it depends on the age of the child. CAFCASS officers also speak to the children, and they get their wishes and feelings
From
about
what age?
I'm not sure what age really, because
Okay.
I suppose it depends on, because you have some 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds that are able to say this is what I want, and there's some that just can't express what
Some
they want.
13-year-olds who don't want to get involved, and
I've got to say the older children as well, because they're put in a predicament because they don't want to choose.
Yeah.
They don't want to say I want to live with mum or I want to live with dad.
Yeah.
So I think by talking, the CAFCASS officer then sees what is in the best interest, because it's also if one parent lives. If a child has grown up in a particular area as well, that's going to be hard as well to then say, okay, you're going to move to the other side of London or wherever. So they really do need to take their best interests into consideration. And I think then they talk to the schools as well, or nurseries, to get a better picture of how this child is coping, during this child, the parents' separation, and how best they can help.
So they look at the whole picture of the child.
Yes,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, family dynamics. I think they talk to extended family members as well.
Okay.
Because it's very difficult when parents separate.
Okay.
There's a lot of loss there.
Yes.
The family members aren't seen, like grandparents are often left out as well.
Yeah, cousins, aunts, uncles. Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, we'll stop here and then we'll come back to part 2, Heather, because one of the questions that I really thought might be important to ask you is, if you were going to do a self-referral, what do you need to know and what do you need to keep in mind? Are all self-referrals, do they end up being accepted,
Yes.
to work in a family contact center or child contact center? Or are there some that can be rejected, for lack of a better word? Yeah? Okay, we'll come right back. Thanks, Heather.
All right, thank you.
Hi, welcome back to part 2 of my interview with Heather Brown, who is a family mediator. And Heather, you work also with teenagers. Is it mainly in PRU, People Referrals Unit, that you work?
Yes.
Yeah.
So between the ages of 11 to 16, we work with those pupils that may be finding it hard to settle in classes, that have behavioural problems, i.e., not able to, either frequent fighting or constant answering back or shouting out in classes. So we have them for up to 6 weeks, and we work on a mentoring program with them, and we just try to get to the bottom of what the issue is, try and give them strategies of coping and how they can change their behaviour around to be able to go back to school.
Yes, and so you work with the teenagers. You're a family mediator. When it comes to the world of divorce, there are 2 things that you do. You're a family mediator, a trained family mediator, and you also work with SPIFs. Could you tell us what that is?
So SPIFs is a separated parents information program, and basically this course is a 4-hour course that's designed for parents who have gone through separation or divorce. And it's basically looking at the effects of divorce on themselves as well as the effects on their children. And I think a lot of parents, they're caught up in their own conflict between each other. And I think they forget about the children. And they forget that they're also going through this as well. So this is what this course was designed for. And you get it via CAFCASS. I think it's for families who go to court. The judge will usually order this, that they attend the course, the SPIFs course.
So to be able to attend a SPIFs course, you have to have been referred on by the family courts.
Yes, I think there are some organisations out there who will probably accept self-referrals, but then that person would probably have to pay for that. I think if you have it via the courts, you'll get it free if your threshold, I think, is under 40,000 a year. You get that free, so it's like a legal aid. If you earn over that, then you have to pay, and I think it's about £200 for that course.
Go on, sorry.
You go ahead. Go
Okay,
ahead.
I was just going to say, and today we are talking about contact
Mhm.
centers.
Mhm.
It's not, I'll just make this clear, it's not because Heather works in you manage two contact centers, Heather,
I did.
right?
Yes, I did.
And it's not because you do that today that we're having this interview. This
No.
this interview is really a great source of information, I would say, from somebody who's worked there for what, 7 years,
Yes. Yes.
on what it all and what contact centers or family contact centers entail, what it means to go in there, what the services are. We've talked about supervised and supported contact.
Mhm.
And you've said something that I wasn't aware of about being able to self-refer to a contact center.
Yes.
And you mentioned about CAFCASS and how they look after the children's rights. And of course we'll hear all kinds of stories with CAFCASS. Some of them are really it's kind of like the NHS. Some of them are
Definitely.
really positive, and then the other
Yep.
people who've had not very nice stories with
They've not had
CAFCASS.
enough
But it's
stories.
still an organization that people can turn to in need when it comes to separation and divorce.
Definitely. And
Yeah,
they have a lot of information on their websites. Both NAC and CAFCASS have a lot of information on their websites to help parents
yeah.
to cope, and other organisations that they may be able to turn to as well.
And NAC, you said, stands for
National Association of Child Contact Centres.
and they're there to help parents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
find the right centre that is suitable for them.
Okay.
I will say that there's other forms of contact as well, because you can do handover. So where there's no real issue between parents, but parents who just don't want to meet, they can use contact centres as a handover place.
All right.
So the resident parent will drop off the child,
Okay.
and the child then goes out with the non-resident parent. Sorry,
Okay.
and that may be for several hours, or it may be that they drop them off on a Friday, and then they come back and get them on a Sunday, depending on the centre's opening times.
Yeah.
So it's just a handover point where, really the parents do not want to meet. They can do that. And there's also another service,
go on, another service?
Sorted contact as well. And that is contact that takes place in the community. So that's also like another form of supervised contact, but that is for lower risk families.
Okay.
So then they can go out in the community, so they can then go swimming.
What's it called again?
Escorted contact.
Escorted contact. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it's like escorted or community contact.
All right.
So they might see, the parents are looking, they might see it under one of those two names.
Okay.
And that is then contact in the community. So then
explain a little bit more.
So then I think the worker is there to ensure safety still.
Okay.
So especially like if they've been in the contact centre having supervised contact for a number of sessions, and then it may feel, okay, let's see how this parent will cope outside of those boundaries, basically, in the community. So then they would then have the opportunity to plan a day out.
Okay.
And that worker is there to support not just the child, but also the parent as well.
Okay. So before we get into the question that I was going to get into with regards to how to go about, self-referring and what you need to know, and because sometimes you can be accepted, you can be rejected by the contact center when you self-refer.
Mm-hmm.
I've just realized who pays for these services. So how much, so if you go for escorted contact, for example, who pays for it?
Thing is, it depends on how the case is referred.
Okay.
A lot of families using contact centres at the moment pay for it themselves.
Okay.
Because the contact centres are independent, they don't have government funding at all.
I see.
So they have to source their own funding. So if they do not get as like some funding from CAFCASS, it's not a lot of funding that they will get from CAFCASS. They have to source that elsewhere. So it'll be either from grants or donations. For the centres that I used to work for, we used to get a lot of donations from the local churches.
Right.
And as well as the staff, a lot of the staff that work at contact centres are volunteers. And that's very, important to know as well. So a lot of people that if, families go there and they see people in the centres, they're not always being paid. They're volunteers that give up their time, a couple of hours, either a couple of hours a month, or they give up their time weekly to come and help support families as well. So you find the families are actually having to fund the contacts themselves.
Okay. Do you know how much it is, or does it vary?
It varies. At the time when I was running the centre, supported contact ranged from about £40 for 2 hours.
Okay.
Supervised contact was a bit more because you have to obviously pay for the worker's time and also for the production of the notes as well, because the notes then have to be typed up in case they're produced in court as well. So then that ranged from about £60 an hour.
An hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what you find is some contact centres may not charge you for your contact, but they will charge a referral fee.
Ah, I see.
That's to cover the admin costs and setting up of the contact.
And how much is the referral fee?
That will probably be around £40.
Okay.
Range starting from about £40.
Okay.
But it was always very contentious, about the parents do come and they do find it stressful, and we had a lot of parents come in, how am I going to afford to pay for this? And it's very hard because it is expensive, and from their point of view they're paying to see their children.
Yes. Yeah. So the person paying will be the non-resident parent.
Yes, non-resident parent. In some cases, the resident parents split the costs.
Yes, I was going to ask. Yeah.
But in a high majority of the cases, it is the contact that is a non-resident parent that is having to pay for it.
Okay. If in the case that I mentioned to you earlier about the mom and the dad, and also I'm just thinking about all these emails that I get sometimes from parents, moms and dads, where either one of the parent is just behaving appallingly and really, and sometimes they can be. If it's the dad, maybe he really truly believes he's doing this for the benefit of their child, but what he's actually doing is, I hate to say that, screwing up the child to the point where the child becomes alienated from the mom or from the dad. So now they turn around and they want to come to a contact center. How does that work? If the resident parent says, okay, I'm going to have you come to a contact center, right? And self-refers to a contact center. What does this parent who's doing the self-referral, need to know about contact centers, and being rejected or being accepted? What kind of cases?
They have to be prepared to then come for an interview.
Okay.
And that initial interview is very important, because this is where the contact centre does their risk assessment, because they have to get the background information of their case, basically what has been happening up until this point. Why do you feel that you need to use a contact centre? Because especially in cases where there's been domestic violence, I suppose the centre has to assess whether it is safe for contact to go ahead, because they also have to look at the risk to the child, and also the risk to their staff as well. So some self-referrals may find that they are rejected because the risk is too high, and then they may have to go down the route of going to court. Also, if there's in the interview, if it's found out that there may have been past issues with either sexual abuse or high levels of abuse that the centre cannot handle, then that family would then have to look for a specialist centre where the workers are trained in this area, because obviously the families are using the centre, and there are other children and families using the centre. So the centres have got to do their risk assessment to make sure that contact is safe for everyone.
Yeah. Gosh, Heather, there's so much to talk about when it comes to contact centres.
Yes.
And as you're speaking, I'm seeing all these cases flashing in front of my eyes and thinking, I should ask about that. I should ask about this. But I'm just wondering how you can actually make a non-resident parent come to the contact centre. If he or she decides, no, I've always seen my child on a Saturday and I pick him or up from your house and that's what I want. And the resident parent says, I don't want you in my house anymore. If you want to see him or her, you need to meet me at the contact centre. How does that ever work out?
I suppose when we used to do the initial interviews, we had a lot of parents, and I have to say that it's male and female, so mums and dads that use contact centres. And before I left, kind of thing, there were lots of grandparents coming as well. So, especially where they wanted to see their grandchildren in the centre. And everybody who came through that door, especially the non-resident parent, was, I don't want to be here. I don't see why I should do it. I haven't done anything to be watched. I'm a good parent. And it's just explaining to them, okay, this is the situation. Your relationship and the communication has broken down with the resident parent. You want to see your child wants to see you. I always used to say, see this as a stepping stone.
Yes.
You know, this is the first step to getting where you need to be. So you may not like it, but the weeks and months that you haven't seen your child is having, as you said, a longer effect on them.
Yeah.
So coming to see them for a couple of hours every week or every 2 weeks is better than not seeing them at all.
Yeah.
And I think if you explained it like that and just saying, but remember, when you step through that door and you go in to have contact, everybody's in the same boat as you. Everybody's feeling the same way. And that's where the volunteers played a big role, because they were there to support those families, especially when the children left the contact. So once they've had their time at the centre and then they'd left, a lot of the parents, they crumbled. They held it together during those 2 hours or 3 hours there. But I know it's really sad. And when their child left them, you know, and they know they're not seeing them for another week or so, they broke down. I'm talking about big strapping men breaking down and crying because, you know, it's so painful. It's so painful, but it's having that support there for them as well, knowing that, you know, that contact centres are impartial, but they're caring as well.
Yes.
And, you know, they have to, you know, they're there for the children, they're there for the parent as well, providing that support.
Thank you so much, Heather.
Yeah.
Thank you so. That was just an interview that was so packed with information that will be so vital for people who are looking to find out more about family contact centres, children's right, CAFCASS, child centres, you know, child custody as it used to be called.
Yes.
Thank you so much. If
Okay. Also, sorry, can I just say as well, for the resident parents, there is support for them as well, because I've spoken about the resident, but for them as well, because they're in a separate room and they may wait in the centre and they're anxious as well because they've given their children over, you know, to basically strangers who are the contact centre workers to then ensure that their children are kept safe. But there is support for them as well. And it's working together to get them to a stage where they can communicate and they can leave the centre and make their own arrangements. And so it's a short-term measure, the contact centres. It's not for forever. It is initial setting out. Sorry. Sorry.
Sorry, cool. Yeah, so it's a short-term and for the resident parent as well, they get support.
Yes. And it's just, definitely. And also giving them, signposting them to other organisations that may help them as well. Because they do as parents, because once their relationship as parents, as partners end, their relationships as parents are forever, basically. Yeah. So they need to understand that they will have to work towards making their own arrangements outside of the centre.
Okay. And Heather, with regards to, couples coming, parents coming, is it possible for them, if they don't want to see each other, that they don't have to cross each other's paths?
That is always a must at the contact centre, especially when there's conflict. So what would normally happen is they have staggered arrival and departure times. So the resident parent would usually come first, depending on the situation, and then the contact parent would arrive maybe 15 to 20 minutes after. And then after contact has ended, what we used to do is have the resident parent and the child leave, and then the contact parent would wait 15 minutes. So that's to ensure that there's no conflict and that child is not witnessing parents arguing or bickering. But sometimes it just used to take the sight of looking at each other to set couples off.
Yeah. So how does I know now that you're working as a family mediator.
Yes.
And you're working, SPIFs, we know that you need to be able to come into that, you need to be family court referred. But if anybody wanted to speak with you about family mediation matters and how you can help them, reach, a good co-parenting plan, where can they find you?
They can go to my website, which is www.heathervbrown.co.uk. So that's V for Victor. So that's www.heathervbrown.co.uk. Okay.
And you work with parents, with couples anywhere, or do they have to be within?
Yes, in Croydon and London areas, so I can travel. And as you said, not only are the contact centres to make child arrangements, families can come to mediation to put in parenting plans as well, and make plans for their children as well.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you. I'll speak to you later.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye-bye.